A poodle?
Yeah, but I hope they didn't dye the dog blue.
Oh, people dye their dogs all the
Seriously?
time. Oh, it's like a whole thing. Yeah, it's like, yeah, you can accessorize your dog.
Stop that.
Yeah. Leave them alone.
I can't be starred, you are, get out my way. I gotta win, I like I'm not, the one on the top, we've been here before, you know what I did. I'm on my job, I'm doing my thing, I'm first on you boys, I'm doing it again.
Touchdown Giants, Peyton Smith, and they win it in overtime.
I'm going 50 for 50, me and the team is surprised.
Robbie Anderson, touchdown Jets.
Just put up a shut-up time, and we didn't get the job done today.
To the bone, top dog, I'm alone.
You simply can't guard Mike.
I can't be starred, you are, get out my way. I gotta win, I like I'm not, the one on the top, we've been here before, you know what I did. I'm on my job, I'm doing my thing, I'm first on you boys.
The Eagles are failing it now.
Extremely disappointing, to say the least.
Let me just say, Dan Orlovsky is one of the most positive people that we have here at the network, which is fitting then that we're going to make him on Christmas Eve the Scrooge of the NFL. He's going to talk about how several teams at the top of their divisions are going to the postseason, but they still have a lot of questions. Just because they're at the top doesn't mean they've got everything figured out, or maybe they just did. What teams have questions, and have they found the answers, Dan?
Well, let's start with the Packers, obviously coming off of last night's performance and the performance of their tailback, Aaron Jones. He's been such an integral part of their offense. And this is the way that this football team is going to own the playoffs if they're going to go on the run, is running the football through Aaron Jones and then Aaron Rodgers being really opportunistic. And I've talked about kind of some of those close misses. He's got to hit those. But Aaron Jones can be a workhorse type of tailback for this offense. The San Francisco 49ers, you've got to have at least some concerns about their offensive line and the injuries. They lost their center, Weston Richburg, a couple weeks ago, and it's really had impact on their whole offensive line. This is an important piece of this offense. He makes all the calls in their run game, but also in their protection, how they handle pressures in games. And we saw last week Jimmy G get hit a lot. The New England Patriots may have found something Saturday against the Bills in their run game with Sony Michel. They put their fullback, Landon Roberts, who's a linebacker out there, ran it with Michel, and then N'Keal Harry, him getting touches in different ways other than just throwing him the football, sometimes handing it off to him. Those are going to be two really big parts for the Patriots moving forward. And then the Kansas City Chiefs. We have never seen the Chiefs with a healthy Patrick Mahomes and a big-time defense. The last 6 or 7 weeks, you can make the case that the Chiefs' defense is as good as anyone in the NFL. Think about that. We know how explosive the offense is, but if this defense carries over this performance into the playoffs, this could be a team that no one has seen under Patrick Mahomes.
All right, maybe that was a little bit of an oversell on my part because you were less Ebenezer Scrooge and more Jimmy Stewart, but it's fine.
You can't get me to be negative.
I can't get him.
You just can't.
We can't get him to go negative. That Dan
Orlovsky.
Orlovsky joining us here to break down who does and doesn't have.
Jones to the left side, inside the 5 and into the end zone. Aaron Jones, see ya. Green Bay wins the NFC North.
You know, for the Packers, last night's game was a little bit like me wrapping Christmas presents, right? Like, it's not going to be pretty. There's definitely going to be some gaps, for sure, too much tape, but it will get the job done. And in the end, the packaging matters little once you get to the gift, which in this case for Green Bay was a division title. Myron Metcalf has more.
You like that?
They screamed so loud you could hear them in the hallways. They chanted, they cheered.
You guys will be off Christmas.
In the eyes of the Packers, the way they won on Monday night didn't matter.
Well, we found a way to win. I think it's an important quality for any team that wants to make a run. Hasn't been pretty at all times, but we stuck with the plan.
With quarterback Aaron Rodgers and the other anchors of this roster leading the way, the Packers have the confidence they can win big in the playoffs, even when it's not sexy.
There's a lot of emphasis on looking pretty or dominating in a way that befits your explanation. But that tonight was a really good performance for us.
We go into a season, especially being a Green Bay Packer, that we expect to win. We expect to put ourselves in January football.
Rodgers didn't throw a touchdown. There were 3 first-half turnovers for the Packers, including an interception of Rodgers. But Rodgers helped stabilize his team by leading a couple of drives in the second half that were capped by Aaron Jones touchdowns. A bruising defense held Minnesota to just 7 first downs.
Time to crank it up, downfield, and intercepted. Kevin King.
We was on the sideline saying somebody got to make a big-time play. And, man, he came up with it, man. The big players make big-time plays in big-time games, and that was a situation where we needed it, and he came through in the clutch.
Everybody's in the right mind frame. Nobody's happy exactly where we are right now. Definitely happy in the moment, but it's time to turn this thing on and keep it moving.
Monday's win felt like a message to the rest of the league. For the Packers, the playoffs will bring new goals. And winning ugly, they've shown, can be a beautiful thing.
If you include last night, the Packers have won all 3 games in which Aaron Rodgers finished without a touchdown pass this season. Green Bay won each of those games by at least a touchdown. They forced a turnover in each contest. That doesn't hurt. Prior to the season, Packers were 4-10, Jay, in games that Rodgers started and did not throw a touchdown.
As the decade comes to an end, one of the NFL's greatest wide receivers is at a crossroads. Antonio Brown made 7 Pro Bowls and was All-Pro First Team 4 times in the 2010s, but his legacy has now been marred over the last 9 months. Since his trade request from Pittsburgh, he's been maligned by helmet controversies, releases from the Raiders and the Patriots, and social media infamy. ESPN NFL senior writer Jeremy Fowler's article, just released on ESPN.com, includes conversations with former teammates, associates, and family members to learn how Brown got here and what's next. One of the most revealing conversations was with Antonio's father, Eddie Brown, who said, quote, "If everybody's coming at you with so many directions, requiring so much of you, there comes a point where you can't take a deep breath and you lash out. You're overwhelmed and don't know how to respond. We've been talking about that since he's been home," unquote. And with that, we welcome in Jeremy Fowler. Jeremy, how did Brown's years in Pittsburgh and other football stops get us to his current situation?
Well, Jay, there's a common theme with Antonio Brown. It dates back to his high school days. It's great player on the field, but he could flip a switch on. You know, the mood swings have always been an issue. You talk to ex-teammates at several stops, coaches. You know, at Central Michigan at one time, he trashed a coach's office and people didn't even really know why. And so teams always had to decide, do you want to deal with this or not? They usually did because he was a great player. Right. But, you know, in Pittsburgh, they decided to manage it and really protect him in a lot of ways without him even knowing, because, they got all these calls about the off-field issues and when he wouldn't show up to work. And so, they kept him in sort of this protective cocoon, limited confrontations, got him to the field. And so when he was traded and sort of out on his own, some of these things started to go unchecked.
Just get away from the football part so far. You got so many legal issues. How did we get there?
Well, it's one of those things where it's an accumulation over time, but really the last few years, several people point to his contract in 2017, the 4-year, $68 million deal. He got paid, and then some of the behavior started to get worse. So you have all these lawsuits. He at one time was employing 20-plus people. We're talking photographers, trainers, chefs, over a course of 5 or 6 years. And so some people he would pay, and some people he decided he didn't want to pay a fair wage depending on the mood. And so, you had that. You had a very chaotic home life. We did the research. Police reports say they were called 20 times out to his Pennsylvania house over really a 4-year span, 2014 to 2018. Now, sometimes it was minor stuff like, fire alarms going off, but there were 3 domestic disturbances. There were just some random calls like him forgetting where his cars were. And so you combine all that with, of course, the sexual assault case, which we were told was at the 1-yard line as far as the settlement talks. So they were basically done, agreed to a huge number, around $2 million. And then Brown moved on from it at the last minute, decided he didn't want to pay it. And so that could have changed things for him.
Another quote by Antonio's father, he's starting to put some things together, see it from a different perspective that I think is very positive. All he wants is another chance to write his story and play the game he loves. What can we expect for Antonio's future on and off the field?
Well, I've spoken to his father several times over the last few months, and he and a lot of other people in AB's life hope that, the therapy he's undergoing will really make a change for him. He has tried, of course, the social media issues that he keeps putting on Twitter sort of combat that notion, but they have seen progress in his life. And speaking to Drew Rosenhaus's agent, he's convinced that this guy will have a job when the investigation concludes. Now, the season's about over. It's a lost season. Let's say he gets 6 games next year. Well, Drew tells me after that, at least 3 teams want to talk to him at length, have him in for a visit, figure out what's next. He says that, AB for the most part has been a good NFL citizen, so he's hoping that gives him some street cred in the future.
Jeremy's story up right now on ESPN.com. Go check it out. Jeremy Fowler, thank you much.
Thank you.
Jay, speaking of checking things out, it's bowl season, so here's what to watch for at 8 Eastern on ESPN. Hawaii taking on BYU in the Hawaii Bowl. What does BYU quarterback Zach Wilson have in store for this year's bowl game? Because in the 2018 famous Idaho Potato Bowl, he completed all 18 of his passes for 317 yards and 4 TDs.